Brian, are you ready?
Ready whenever you are.
Okay, let's go with it then. You have it open? You have the public open?
Yes, the meeting is currently open.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this board workshop meeting to order. This workshop is pertaining to the American River Commons Features 2016 project updates to order. And for the record, my name is Bill Edgar. I'm the president of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everyone for logging in and phoning in today. We appreciate your taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. This teleconference constitutes the board's workshop meeting for the month of August 2020. For those who have read the agenda already, you will notice that the staff has put together a rather extensive list of instructions, which are part of the printed agenda for the workshop. We've gone over these before, so I don't think we need to do that again. But if you need assistance, you may call Ryan Jones or our board clerk or Leslie Gallagher, who'll be able to help you if you need that kind of assistance. We're going to handle the meeting the same way as we have in the past, and as before, Ryan will be moderating the proceeding from a technical point of view. He, as well as Leslie, and Michael Wright, and other staff members will be fielding questions or comments from the public who are addressing the board or addressing presenters at this meeting. You can raise your hand or email them or text them if you want to speak to the board, and we'll take the members of the public in the order as they come. Second, you'll notice there's essentially one substantive item with numerous parts on the agenda this morning. Various projects and program updates related to the American Rivers Commons Features 2016 project, which constitutes the primary purpose of this workshop this morning. Specifically, Greg Harvey will introduce the workshop, including the agenda topics and presenters and goals of the workshop. Greg will then moderate the various presentations, introduce the presenters following his introduction. Regarding any comments or questions, we'll ask for questions and comments from the board, and then comments from the public. We'll unmute the public speakers at the end of the board comments. Then after the board is finished, we'll make it ready for the public. Those speakers will provide an opportunity to speak on subjects, and will have speaking abilities after each presentation, since they are separate items. Probably questions ought to be at the end of each presentation, each item. After we've completed the public questions, I'll bring it back to the board. This is a workshop. There will be no actions taken, therefore will be no action on today's matter. We'll try and be a little more flexible, since this is a workshop setting, than we are at a regular board meeting. You should be aware, I think it's been you've been noticed already, that the meeting is being recorded, and it's being housed in our website, just the way our regular meetings are. We'll be taking breaks along the way as we think are appropriate, and giving the staff a chance to catch up, and our short break for our court reporter. So I'm on item 1 on the agenda, introductions and announcements. Leslie has indicated she has no further announcements at this time. So we'll move to item 2 on the agenda, which is the roll call. And Mr. Valines has indicated he's on vacation this week, so he will not be attending the meeting. But for the rest of us, I think we have all present, but Ron, would you mind please calling the roll?
Board Member Grego,
Present.
Board Member Johnson,
I'm here. Good morning.
Board Member Ramirez,
Here. Good morning.
Board Member Valines is absent, Board Member Countryman,
Present. Good morning.
Vice President Dolan,
I'm here.
President Edgar.
I'm here. Thank you, members. We're all here except member Valines. So we have obviously a quorum to conduct our business under the Water Code Section 8560. Number 3 on the agenda is public comments not on the agenda, and we do have 2 emails that were made part of the record, that will be made part of the record of this workshop. One from Ms. Lisa Finks and one from Mark Berry. Both of them are requesting a workshop regarding the proposed CASAS project in Rancho Cordova. I'm without objection, I'm going to refer these matters to the staff, who will prepare a meeting or schedule a meeting with the residents at the staff level to see what questions they can ask, and when and if a application is prepared, then this matter will be prepared by the staff and presented to the board, and we'll have a regular hearing on it as we normally do for these kinds of matters. But at least for me, I don't think at this point a workshop on this matter is appropriate.
Mr. President?
Yes, Jane.
This is Jane Dolan. It looks like this morning at about 7:30 in the morning, we also received an email from Robert Burness. So that should be noted.
Okay, I didn't see that email. Is that the same thing, Jane?
Very similar.
Okay.
So the staff will read that because it says why you're talking about it. There's things that they ask.
Okay. I think the staff will try to schedule a meeting with those smaller meeting with those participants, and then see if they can answer questions that may come up or see what their concerns are. As I say, if this matter comes before the board as a request or a permit or whatever, then the board will handle it in its normal manner. But at this point, we're not prepared to do that. Okay, take care of those.
Hello.
What's that?
My name is Brenda Gustin, and I'm speaking on behalf of that group as well. We're really asking for a workshop. I apologize, I'm new to this platform, so I'm not sure if this is the public comment. But
yes, this is the public comment. If you want to comment on this item, please proceed.
I do. We're asking for a workshop so that we can learn about the matter as to the floodplain. I'm sorry, I don't have all the legalese with that, but let me see if I can find kind of some notes on that. We're wanting to have a workshop to explain the Title 23 California Code of Regulations, the Water Division in Section 113B prohibits construction of year-round dwellings within an adopted plan of flood control, absent a major variance. Section 107 of the board's regulations prohibits this construction. So that's what's addressed by a number of people, including.
Okay. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Brenda Gustin, Gustin.
Okay, Ms. Gustin, this item has been referred to the staff, and they're going to schedule a separate, smaller meeting with the appropriate people to discuss the regulations under Title 23. We'll have our general counsel at that meeting, and we can go through that for you. This is not appropriate for a board workshop at this time.
Okay, well, we're requesting Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Are
morning.
there any comments to the from the public other than what we've just heard on the CASAS project?
Good morning, Board President Edgar. My name is Sergio Diaz, and I apologize for submitting late this morning a comment. I was having difficulty with my scanner, but I submitted it to Mr. Jones and he acknowledged receipt. So I
Okay.
would like to, in the interest of time, I don't know if the board members received that written statement or letter that I prepared, but if you would allow me, I would like to read the my statement, and it's in conjunction with the requests that have already been made and that have been acknowledged by the board with regard to a workshop at some future date. So if I may proceed, I would like to read that statement now.
Briefly.
Okay, we've taken these other statements on the record under considerations,
Yes, sir.
and we have those statements. So
I understand, sir. I promised our communities that I would. So if you
okay,
would just
fine,
allow me.
fine.
Thank you, sir. Board President Edgar, board members, executive officer, chief counsel, and other agency personnel. We are grateful for the board's workshop today with a focus on projects along the Lower American River and Sacramento River, a topic of vital concern to our local communities. Likewise, we appreciate the board's ongoing oversight of the American River designated floodway adopted plan of flood control. A 12-mile expanse between Nimbus Dam and Mayhew Drain. Mindful of the 2020 $373 million Folsom Dam Raise project. The Dam Raise project that added a new emergency spillway to Folsom Dam at a cost exceeding $1 billion, and the pending joint levee project between the Army Corps of Engineers and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board levee protection program on the Lower American River at an estimated cost of $1.56 billion. We reiterate our July 2021 written request to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board for a notice workshop on the American River designated floodway adopted plan of flood control. As with today's board workshop, we're requesting a notice workshop on the American River designated floodway adopted plan of flood control. We would like the workshop to explain the purpose of the American River designated floodway, the regulations that govern the floodway, encroachments allowed by the Central Valley Flood Protection Board regulations, and encroachments disallowed by regulation, including the reasons for both. The board's regulation and information readily available on the internet provides scant guidance regarding allowed and disallowed construction of permanent buildings in the board's designated floodway. Simply put, our communities would like to hear from the board what type of residential development is allowed or disallowed in the floodway, the criteria and specific reasons for a floodway map revision, how the board coordinates approval of development within designated floodways with local communities and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which oversee and regulate development in FEMA 100-year and 200-year floodplains, often referred to as special flood hazard areas. Given the 2017 Oroville Dam incident and the rapid and unpredictable climate change, with its exponential risk for flooding in heavily populated urban areas, we respectfully request a date certain by which a notice workshop on the American River designated floodway adopted plan of flood control is to be scheduled. We thank you in advance and for your prompt attention to this request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. As you probably know, we we took action referring all of these matters to the staff. They will schedule a smaller meeting on this as well as the broader subjects that you've indicated, and see if we can help you out with the rules and regulations related to designated floodways.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or requests from the public to speak to the board on the agenda? You see any, Leslie or Ryan?
Hi, Ryan. Hello?
I think, is that a comment right there?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought I was just talking to Ryan to ask if I could speak.
Who is that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how this works. I'm not able to access via my laptop. My name is Mark Portuando. I don't know if this is a on agenda item or not. I don't think it is because this is focusing on the American River, but is the section about encroachment removal, is that going to apply to all of the Sacramento East Levee project as well?
Well, this is all related to the American River Common Features projects, all of these reports. In any event, maybe you listen along, maybe that would be helpful as we proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, Leslie will take those comments into consideration and keep us posted on how the staff, the time, the scheduling of the meeting and so on. Okay, moving to item 4. As I stated before, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Greg Harvey. He's going to introduce this item under 4A, and who will introduce this item and moderate this morning's presentation. Our thought today is to give the board a update on all the projects related to the American River Common Features Project 2016, and the updates that would pertain to that. So we're going to proceed through items 4A through 4E or F for this workshop. And Greg, I'm going to ask you to be the moderator on these presentations. So
Thank you, President Edgar.
if you're ready, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's start this off. Good morning, President Edgar, Vice President Dolan, Executive Officer Gallagher, and members of the board. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from members of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Water Resources, and Central Valley Flood Protection Board staff who work intimately every day on one of the largest flood improvement projects in the state, the American River Common Features 2016 project, also known as ARCF 2016. Ms. Nicole May, project manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, will be giving an overview of the ARCF 16 project, including construction status, various milestones, and schedule. Kyle Bickler, project manager with Department of Water Resources on the ARCF 16 project, along with project team members from the Army Corps and their consultants, will provide an in-depth walkthrough of the Sacramento River Widening Project and the new fish passage component. Next, we have Selva Mohan, our chief of the Sacramento Levee section, providing an update on the on the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, otherwise known as SAFCA, encroachment removal incentive program, along with its current success and upcoming activities. Then we have Selva and Dennis Bartholomew, Sacramento Levee section staff, providing an overview of the impacted encroachments along the Sacramento River East Levee and our recently created access point map. And finally, Karina Castro, another Sacramento Levee Section staff, and Selva will provide an overview of the proposed erosion work along the Sacramento and American rivers. So now I want to change the theme a little bit and just talk about the focus of the workshop. So I'd like to focus this workshop on all the fantastic coordination between all the agencies involved, including, of course, the federal government, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the National Marine Fisheries Service, multiple state agencies, our board, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, Department of Water Resources, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I know there's other ones. Local agencies such as SAFCA, the City of Sacramento, the County of Sacramento, and the project consultants who have contributed greatly to the design of the Fish Passage project and other components of the ARCF 16 project. It definitely, and we did some dry runs earlier. I took this from Nicole May, PM at the Army Corps. It's definitely a team effort, and it takes an entire village to accomplish such a great feat. So real briefly, before Nicole starts, I know the board members have this in their staff reports, but I'd like to give a quick background of the ARCF 16 funding and how the project came about. It's no surprise that the Sacramento area is prone to flooding. After the recent flooding events of 1986 and 1997, Congress authorized flood risk reduction projects in the Water Resources Development Acts of 1996 and 1999. Then in 2015, the General Reevaluation Report identified the most flood risk prone areas in the Sacramento Valley, and the WRDA, or the Water Resources Development Act, was reauthorized in 2016. Then in 2018, the federal government, through the Bipartisan Budget Act, granted the Army Corps of Engineers $1.8 billion of full upfront funding for these high-risk flood areas within the Sacramento Valley. So now, with that, I'd like to take any questions, or if not, I'd like to introduce Ms. Nicole May with the Army Corps of Engineers to provide an overview of the ARCF 16 project.
Good morning, President Edgar and members of the board. My name is Nicole May. I am a project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers on the American River Common Features 2016 project. My
Good
area
morning,
of focus.
Nicole.
Good morning, sir. My area of focus is seepage stability and overtopping. Before I move off this slide, just to kind of echo Greg's comments, it really does take a team, and I just want to compliment the partnership that has happened between the Corps, yourselves, the Department of Water Resources, and the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. We have honestly leveraged everyone's efforts on this massive project to make, to get everything done we've got done so far, and we'll continue to do so, and just appreciate the support of this very important flood risk reduction project. I'm going to provide a very high-level overview of the overall project, and then a more focused overview of the seepage stability and overtopping features. So the next slide is a very big picture overview of the project. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what I really want to say here is that the purpose of this project is to address the flood risk associated with the confluence of the Lower American River and the Sacramento River. Both of these rivers have very large watersheds and very high potential runoff, which has overwhelmed the existing system in the past. It's created an unacceptably high level of risk of flooding for approximately 530,000 people, approximately 125,000 structures, and approximately $62 billion worth of damages. It's also important to note that the project area is home to our state capital, also the fifth largest economy in the world. And so the consequences of a levee failure, any future levee failure, would be catastrophic, given the highly urbanized area and that the potential for floodwaters to reach depths of up to 20 feet. So how are we really addressing that risk with this project? We've broken the project into features, so it's kind of more manageable. We're going to be doing erosion improvement features, which you can see highlighted on the map in green. There's up to 11 miles of erosion improvement on the lower American River, both sides of that, and up to 10 miles of erosion improvements on the east side of the Sacramento River. We also have seepage stability and overtopping improvements. Those are divided between the east side of the Sacramento River, and up in the top right, you can see American River North Basin, that yellow area, what we like to refer to as North Area streams. There's up to 13 miles of improvements for seepage, up to 5 miles each for stability and overtopping. And then in the top left, you can see the Sacramento Weir and Bypass is also a part of our overall project. We're approximately widening that by 1,500 feet, which you will hear a lot more detail about later in the later today. So as Greg mentioned also, I like to say what makes us special is that we were fully funded under the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. So I'm sure you're very familiar with it, but in a nutshell, out of a pot of money dedicated to proactively reducing flood risk of $5 billion for the entire Corps, our project received $1.5 billion of that pot. So what that says is on a national platform, it's a very high priority to address this catastrophic flood risk. And on a local platform, what that says is we're able to address it in a much more cost-effective and efficient manner. Next slide. So here is the overall integrated master schedule for the entire project. These are only the flood risk reduction contracts, and there are 15 highlighted here. There's 2 which you do not see. One that was completed by the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency to address seepage on Arcade Creek and Nemdeck. That was completed in 2019. And one that we refer to as Reach D Contract 1, that was just below Old Sacramento, about a 440-foot berm. That was also completed in 2019. That creates 17 total flood risk reduction contracts for the overall effort. Out of those 17, 13 are tracking a completion of January 2024, which was the targeted completion date given to us when they gave us the full upfront funding. Our authorized project was to be completed over a 10-year span, and when they gave us the full upfront funding, they reduced that targeted completion to a 5-year span. So it's a very aggressive program, and we are working very hard to reach those goals. So as you can see, 13 of these contracts will be meeting that goal. There are 4 that are tracking outside of the January 2024 completion. That's 3 erosion contracts on the Sacramento River and then the Sacramento Weir. The other thing I really want to highlight on this slide is that 2022 is our first very big year for construction. We're really starting to climb up that bell curve of progress for the overall project. We're scheduled to award 6 construction contracts in 2022. That's going to be 2 for seepage, stability, and overtopping, 1 in the Big Pocket, and then 1 on Magpie Creek. It includes 3 erosion contracts, which will be the first erosion contracts to be awarded, 2 on the American River, 1 on the Sacramento River, and then the Sacramento Weir is also tracking a 2022 award. I do want to highlight 2 of these contracts are currently underway. We have the Sacramento River East Levee Contract 2, which is currently in construction on various segments along the east side of the Sacramento River. And then we have the Sacramento Bypass, which is a part of the bigger, and this always trips me up, so I got to look at it, Lower Elkhorn Basin Levee Setback Project, and that was awarded by the Department of Water Resources. Another example of how the big team has been working together. Next slide. So this slide is intended to give you an overall summary of how we address seepage and stability issues and what that really looks like. So we can address seepage and stability through 2 primary means. One, through a seepage berm on the land side of the levee. That requires a lot of space, and we just don't have a lot of space on the east side of the Sacramento River in our levee footprint. The second The second way we can address it is a seepage cutoff wall, and that allows us to work within the levee prism itself. It's constructed with a material that is resistant to the flow of water, and this low permeability material greatly reduces or cuts off the flow of seepage through and or beneath the levee. So what does construction really look like? This cross section, you can see that top half, that's the degrade footprint. We need to degrade approximately between 1/3 and 1/2 of the levee, and we do that for 3 reasons. The first is to reduce risk of causing damage to the remaining levee embankment and its foundation. The second is to create a working platform for the construction equipment to excavate and to construct the cutoff wall. In some cases, that working platform is required to be 60 feet wide. And the last reason is to reach the design depths required for the cutoff wall to actually cut off those seepage paths. For this project, the range of depths is from 60 feet deep to 145 feet deep. A little bit about the walls themselves and some history. So I'm sure you're aware there were some shallow cutoff walls constructed in the 1990s and early 2000s. This project is really focused on the under seepage. In some cases, we do need to construct a cutoff wall adjacent to the existing shallow cutoff wall. Those cutoff walls can be as close as 2 feet apart. A typical cutoff wall is approximately 36 inches wide. And just to give you a little snapshot of production rates, it ranges based on the different methods that are used to construct the cutoff wall. It can be as little as 20 feet a day to as much as 120 feet a day. These pictures to the right show a slurry bentonite wall in construction. The top right photo shows an excavator digging the trench for the actual cutoff wall. And then the bottom photo shows a bulldozer mixing the contents that will be put into the cutoff wall. Okay, next slide. The next series of slides are map overview of where the improvements are taking place. So there's a color-coded key on the right for each slide, and I included the title of the contracts as well as the year of construction. I'm going to just provide kind of a cumulative summary of improvements for each of these slides. So we're starting at the very top of the Sacramento River. You can see by the confluence. Within this slide, there's approximately a little less than 1 mile of improvements. A quarter of that mile is already constructed, highlighted in green and pink. 1/4 mile is currently under construction in yellow, and approximately 1/3 of a mile will be constructed in 2023 in red, and that is going to be a 2,000-foot levee raise there. The next slide shows approximately 1 mile of improvements, moving a little bit south or downstream. You can see the little pocket there at the bottom of the graphic. There are approximately 2/3 of the mile is complete, which you can see in green, and also this year's construction in yellow is already complete and the levee is rebuilt. And then there is approximately 1/3 of a mile remaining in 2023, and that will be a cutoff wall as well. The next slide shows you the footprint for the big pocket. It's approximately 5.5 miles of total construction. Approximately 2 miles highlighted in green were completed in 2020. Approximately 1.3 miles are included in 2021, this year's construction. 1 mile of that is already in the ground, so the team is making great progress on that. And the last 2 miles will be constructed next year in Contract 3, and that will be the entirety of Contract 3. The next slide shows just south of the town of Freeport. It includes approximately 1,800 feet of levee raise, approximately 750 feet of cutoff wall, and then we'll be excavating and backfilling with impervious material 2 utility windows that have created gaps. That will all happen in 2023. And the last slide for this section is Magpie Creek. You can tell the location in the top left corner. You can see the confluence of the rivers down there at the bottom left of that image. And then kind of a blow-up image of what is actually happening here. Just to highlight the major features, there's 2,100 feet of levee raise, approximately 1,000 feet of new levee construction, and a floodgate that will be across Rayleigh Boulevard. The next couple of slides are photos from our active construction in 2020 and 2021. This first slide is 2020 construction. You can see this picture on the left shows a slurry pond on the side of the levee and the long arm used to construct the trench itself. It's quite impressive in person. On the right, that's the deep mix method rig. That rig is also quite impressive. It stands about 145 feet tall. It requires the entire width of the levee working platform, which is that 60 feet to get the work done. And it has 3 augers it uses to install the wall in 6 to 9 foot increments. The next slide shows some construction photos from our current year of construction, contract 2. This aerial photo on the left is kind of cool. It shows the staging area adjacent to Broadway. This is for the jet grout wall. You can see that they have some pits there dug for the spoils that come out of the wall as they're constructing it. And 2 of those you can see are lined for some hazardous material that is coming out of the wall. The bottom picture is the jet grout rig itself. It creates columns that are 8 feet in diameter, and it could create approximately 4 columns in 24 hours. We are 24-hour operations on this portion of the project since it's not an urbanized area, and it is required to maximize all of that time in order to get that done in one season. And then in the right photo, that's another different angle picture of the long arm. That arm can go to depths of 90 feet. So it is quite the piece of equipment. The next slide goes over the impacts. So with major construction, there's inevitably impacts. I'm going to highlight some of those: truck traffic and dirt movement. So we have to degrade, as I mentioned, the portion of the levee, and then we have to rebuild it at the end. There's a lot of truck traffic that's associated with that work effort, which also causes a lot of dust. It can be at peak times up to 120 trucks per day. So there's a lot going on. That typically happens in the months of March and April for the degrade, and rebuild in August and September. There's also a lot of vibration and noise associated with these massive pieces of construction equipment. They are very close to residential neighborhoods, and they are reaching those very deep depths of 60 to 145 feet. There's, you never know what you're going to hit underground. And while we're doing that major construction, it does cause some vibration and noise that is felt and heard by the public. There are also some recreational impacts. Biking, the levee trails, the levee crest has to be closed to the public during degrade just for safety purposes. Boating and fishing, we've had some impacts at Garsha Bend as well as Miller Park. Currently, we had 1 year where the boat ramp at Garsha Bend was closed for the entire season. That was 2020. For 2021 and 2022, we're only closing it periodically when we have those high truck traffic times for the safety of the public. And then for parks, we have parking areas that we've utilized at Miller Park as well as Garsha Bend, but those parks remained open. The Zacharias Park has had full closure for all of 2021 and will remain closed for 2022 and then restored back to its previous condition. So for the next slide, we do everything we can to mitigate these impacts to the public. For anywhere that there's detours, we make sure to publicize what those routes are through several different means on our website, through flyers. We coordinate with the city to get that posted, and then we post signs notifying the public that it will be closed and when, and then that it is closed and when and where to go. Vibration monitoring, we have vibration monitors that are set every 200 feet within the construction footprint to monitor thresholds that are in alignment with established guidelines and standards by Caltrans. We have dust control. We do water trucks to try to maintain the dust, as well as speed limits and just general house cleaning in general. And then we have water and air quality monitoring that is required throughout the project. Next slide. So this is kind of a good news story. The Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency under Section 408 did a lot of proactive work on this project. So they did do the Arcade Creek and NEMDEC construction in 2019. They also did a design of all of the seepage improvements on the Sacramento River East Levee, and they did design and construct the mitigation for the impacts associated with that work. So that's what this slide is highlighting. Beachstone Lake's mitigation is approximately 24.2 acres. It's anticipated to mitigate for all 3 Sacramento River East Levee seepage and stability contracts and a portion, if not all, of contract 4. It's completed and it is flourishing. I went out there a couple of months ago and saw it, and it looks much more full than these pictures represent from last spring. And the last slide just highlights our website. We have tried very hard to take a proactive effort on the outreach of this project, notifying the public of what a great opportunity it is for us to be fully funded and be able to proactively reduce this risk. We've designed this website so it's geographically set up so that people that live on the American River can click on the American River link and see what's happening in their area. People on the Sacramento River can click the Sacramento River and see what's happening in their area. We have a monthly newsletter that we send out, which you can subscribe for on this website. It highlights what's occurred over the last 30 days and what is anticipated over the next 30 days. Typically, the message to the team is, if there's anything that the public can see, touch, feel, hear, we want them to be able to go to the website and be educated and informed of what is happening before they see, touch, feel, or hear it. So that's been our approach on this project, and really that's all I have, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Greg, at this point, I think we need to ask the board if they have any questions. Any questions from the board at this point? Mary Jane?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. On the picture with the big pocket area, there was some gaps, between projects. Why was there gaps? Why wasn't those areas included to be, part of the project?
Sure. So the gaps that are in the big pocket were already addressed with previous contracts and don't need further improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any comments from the public? We see any questions, Leslie or Ryan?
I have nothing here, Mr. President.
Nothing on my end.
Okay, Greg, let's move on to 4C then, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nicole. That was great. So now, Kyle Bickler, the project manager with Department of Water Resources, is going to introduce the Sacramento Weir widening project and Fish Passage before he turns it over to the Army Corps and consultants.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ryan, for loading the presentation. Good morning, President Egger, Vice President Dolan, and members of the board. My name is Kyle Bickler, Department of Water Resources, Flood Projects Branch. I'm here today with the Army Corps of Engineers and HDR to provide a design overview of the Sacramento Weir Widening and Fish Passage project. We're really excited for this opportunity to showcase the project, and the Army Corps and HDR have some really cool graphics that we think you'll enjoy seeing. So let's dive in. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll be brief. I have a few slides to highlight the history of the Sacramento Weir and the benefits, and a reminder of the upcoming board action schedule for August 27th. And followed by my few slides, the design leads with the Army Corps and HDR will give an overview of the proposed Sacramento Weir widening project as it's currently approaching the 95% design. Presentation will cover design of the Weir widening, followed by the fish passage structure. Next slide, please. So why is the Sacramento Weir important? Well, flood control in the Sacramento Valley began with the flood of 1850. The city responded by building a 3-foot high levee, not very tall, that failed in 1852 and again in 1853. During the late 1800s, the city of Sacramento would continue to build their levees higher and higher, believing that the Sacramento River can be contained within its banks. But all that changed after the bigger floods of 1907 and 1909, when it became clear that the Sacramento Channel cannot convey flood flows, and a flood bypass system was needed to be constructed. The State Flood Control Act of 1911 was enacted to divert flood flows through a system of bypasses and weirs. The Sacramento Weir and bypass were completed in 1916 by the city of Sacramento to divert flood flows from the Sacramento and the American rivers into the Yolo bypass. In 1917, Congress basically enacted the Flood Control Act and included funding for the Sacramento Flood Control Project. And today, DWR operates a Sacramento Weir in accordance with the regulations established by the Army Corps. And next slide, please. The primary purpose of the Sacramento Weir and bypass is to protect the urban area of Sacramento from high flood stages in the Sacramento River by diverting flows to the Yolo bypass. As a result, the Yolo bypass conveys 80% of the flood flows during storm events. As shown in the figure, the project will lower the water stages in the Sacramento by 1 foot, thereby reducing the need for additional levee raises downstream of the Sacramento Weir. Next slide, please. Before handing off the presentation to the Corps and HDR, we want to remind the board of the upcoming action scheduled for August 27th, where the board will be asked to certify the final supplemental EIS-EIR, adopt the statement of findings, the statement of overriding considerations, and the MMRP, and approve the Sacramento Weir project and fish passage. Now I'd like to introduce Sean McNeil with the Army Corps. Ryan, would you please load Sean's presentation? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sean McNeil. I'm the Senior Project Manager with the Corps of Engineers for the Sacramento Weir Widening Project. It's a pleasure to speak to you today on behalf of the team. We're honored and privileged to work on this project. We're a very diverse design team. We have over 100 people on the design and review of this. We work with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, DWR, and SAFCA very closely to execute this project. We are on a quick pace because we were fully funded and it's an emergency project. Once we get to the next slide, I'll show you the schedule that we're currently on. Barring any unforeseen conditions, next slide, Ryan, we plan to be in construction, awarding our construction contract in August, September. So you can see the key dates below. We're going to offer an industry day this October. That will be to assist contractors who may bid on this to understand the project so that they can plan appropriately for when we put this on the street on the ready to advertise date around March of 2022. But we'll conclude our design by February of 2022. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to hand this over to our tech lead to better show you the Sacramento Weir Widening Project. Adam Beyer, I'm going to hand it off to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a briefing on the Sacramento Weir Widening Project today. My name is Adam Beyer, and I'm one of the engineering technical leads for the Army Corps of Engineers for this project. Next slide, please. The Sacramento Weir Widening Project is located along the Sacramento River, just north of the existing Sacramento Weir, which, as Kyle showed earlier, was constructed in 1916. The project will be along the right bank of the Sacramento River, looking downstream, or the western bank of the river. The project site construction access will be from the north of the project, about 8 miles north of the project, near Old River Road and Interstate 5. And I wanted to note an interesting fact about this project is after constructed, during a design flood event, flood flows from the American River will go upstream towards our project and exit into the Sacramento bypass and eventually Yolo bypass through the widened Sacramento Weir. Next slide, please. This slide shows the new weir shown in yellow, which is just to the north of the existing Sacramento weir. And the Sacramento Weir widening project includes a levee segment shown in red on the right side of the weir that is being constructed by the Corps and as part of this project. And this levee segment will connect to the levee setback being constructed, or that is being constructed right now by DWR, the Lower Elkhorn Basin Levee Setback Levee. So once completed, that'll be a continuous levee from the Sacramento River along the Sacramento bypass. And the bypass will be widened approximately 1,500 feet. Next slide, please. This image shows some of the project features, giving you a look going from the Sacramento River at the bottom of the screen towards the yellow bypass on the far side of the screen, or the top of the screen. And wanted to highlight some of the project features for you this morning. The primary project feature, flood control feature, is the weir. And there will be a road bridge for Old River Road that will span the bypass and go over the weir. The road bridge is approximately 1,800 feet long, and the weir is approximately 1,500 feet long. The project includes a levee segment shown in purple on the right side of the screen that will connect to the Levels levee. And this levee segment is about 2,000 feet long and will connect to the Levels levee, and as well as to the existing Sacramento River right bank levee towards the right of the screen. Additionally, in the lighter purple adjacent to the levee, we have a county road, County Road 126, that will start out at the toe of the levee, and then the embankment will come up on top of the levee and connect to Old River Road, providing local access. Turning your attention to the fish passage area on the left side of the bypass on the screen, shown in brown. Matt Prosef and Gabe Kopp will be providing a more detailed presentation on the fish passage components in the next presentation. And the central embankment is a light brown area. It's an embankment that provides O&M access for DWR personnel and provides access and flood fighting capability to stockpile materials, store materials for the fish passage, and separates the existing weir and the widened weir. Couple construction details. This project will include approximately 1,200 piles between the fish passage structure and the road bridge. So there will be a good amount of activity with pile driving to support these concrete structures. And speaking of concrete, we are anticipating approximately 50,000 cubic yards of concrete for the project, mostly between the bridge, the weir, and the fish passage concrete features. Lastly, the Sacramento River levee in front of the weir. You can kind of see the road in front of where I have the label weir and road bridge. The Old River Road is currently on the levee in that segment, and that segment of levee will be degraded near the end of our project, allowing flow to go into the bypass. Next slide, please. Both these diagrams are isometric images of the Sacramento weir, the new weir, looking upstream. The top one shows the road bridge and the 25 bays of the bridge. Spanning on the left side of the screen is the north, and the right side of the screen is the south. And so as you can see, the Sacramento River would be going towards the right on the screen in this image. So this is reverse angle of what I just showed in the last slide. A few things I want to highlight on this slide are the weir is a passive weir, which means when the flow in the Sacramento River reaches a stage of 26 feet in elevation at the project site, flow will begin to flow over this weir segment. And the existing Sacramento weir just to the south of this project is a gated weir with needle gates that needs to be operated. And so this passive weir will provide reduced operations and maintenance activity to allow flow to go into the widened Sacramento bypass. The weir is approximately 1,500 foot long, and the road bridge and weir concrete features will be supported on piles. And lastly, I wanted to point on this slide on the right side of the screen, there's a little green highlighted area. That is where our fish passage feature will be going underneath the bridge and providing access for fish to go up the bypass and into the Sacramento River. Next slide, please. To provide a little bit of orientation on this slide, the top image is a plan view of our north levee setback, or that's what we call our levee segment for this project, and the County Road 126. And below that is a cross-section view. And what I wanted to highlight on this screen was to show how the County Road embankment, if you look at the red cross-section line near the right side of the screen, showing the County Road at that location. The embankment is above the levee and provides access, as I said in previous slide, from County Road 126 to Old River Road. And one thing I wanted to note on this slide is that the project will be maintaining access on Old River Road throughout construction for the project site. And as Nicole noted earlier with the seepage and stability project, this project is also anticipated to have heavy truck traffic on Old River Road coming from the north and I-5. The project includes a total of approximately 1 mile of new paved road along County Road 126 and Old River Road, including the new road bridge. With that, is it time for questions, or do we want to go on to the fish passage first and then come back on questions?
Yeah, any questions from the board on these slides so far?
This is Jane Dolan. I put my hand up. I'm going to take it down because I have questions on the fish passage. So I see you're going to go toward that.
All right, well, thank you. And if you have any questions, I can entertain them later. But with that, I'll hand it over to Matt Prosif and Gabe Kopp from HDR, who will go over the fish passage feature in detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Kopp. I'm a senior fisheries biologist with HDR. I wanted to thank President Egger and members of the board to be able to talk a little bit about HDR's role in supporting the Army Corps, DWR, and SAFCA in the Sacramento Weir widening fish passage design project. I'll be starting a little bit with the biology side of things, and then Matt Prosif will present on the structure. So next slide, please. So we're talking about a floodway project. Why is there fish passage involved in this project? It's a completely fair question. Previously, in the existing Sacramento weir for the overall flood project with the existing Sac weir, there was stranding that occurred after the floodway of the old Sac weir, not the new one that we're building, but the old one. As it began to drain, fish would strand. And that would happen fairly regularly. Biologists would go out as the water receded. They'd pick up as many fish as they could, but obviously there was a great deal of stress, and there was also loss. And so we had notable mortality events sufficiently enough that the National Marine Fisheries Service, NMFS, stated in their regulatory document, the biological opinion for ARCF, that they would require a reduction in the amount of stranding that occurred and to reduce overall take, and take is defined as not only fish mortality, but injury and even delaying their ability to pass through the waters of the river during these flood conditions. Next slide, please. So we need these flood projects. Obviously, we have had a history in California when we don't protect our cities, when we don't protect our homes and our communities, we've seen flooding. Many of us can go back to a decade ago, 2 decades ago, or even 100 years ago, and look at images of flooding, and really we don't want to repeat those. So we protect our cities with levees, we straighten the rivers, and in doing so they become less like a natural river. And so we've learned through time to find that balance better. We can both protect our cities and protect our natural resources and really restore those riverways into environments that are safer for our cities and safer for our fish, provide them with access and passage, and ensure that we're not having water expand so much so that it's creating damage as well. We're finding the balance better. Next slide. So now that we have the idea that we need to have fish passage, and it's part of our floodway project, a regulatory part of our floodway project, what fish are we looking at? Well, the Endangered Species Act drives what fish we are focusing on because those are fish in fewer numbers. So there are 2 species that are currently listed that we're focusing on, specific runs of Chinook salmon, that is the spring and winter run, and then also green sturgeon. Now, green sturgeon is a very archaic species. It's not evolved very much. You might call it a modern-day dinosaur. And so it's a fish that we don't know as much about as we do, say, a salmon or a steelhead. It's one that you may not even recognize as much. And so there's not that many projects that actually pass green sturgeon. In fact, there's very few. To that end, we have really good criteria, state and federally approved criteria for how we pass salmon and steelhead and other species, but we don't have that criteria specific to green sturgeon. Next slide, please. Don't have those guiding documents. What do? Well, we brought in a suite of experts. So experts in the biology of sturgeon, experts in fisheries passage, our regulatory experts, and then our client experts, so that we could discuss in a collaborative fashion, and it took us about 35 formal meetings amongst many other breakout sessions, including participants from the Army Corps, the Department of Water Resources, SAFCA, NIMS, the CVFPB, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and many others, to establish an agreed-upon approach for how we were going to create a structure that provides the best potential environment based on what we know to pass both salmon and green sturgeon. Next slide, please. So, if you were to sit down in a meeting with me, what are some of the things that we would be talking about? How do you come up with a plan to pass these kinds of fish? Well, you're going to look at a number of different things. Timing. So when will the fish be potentially present? They're not always going to be there. And each run of salmon is a little bit different. Sturgeon, their timing is a little bit different. How old will they be when they show up in and around our fish structure? Are they young? Are they old? Are they small? Are they big? And based upon their size and their age, we want to know, are they capable, physically capable, of swimming through the water as fast as it may go relative to our structure to be able to pass through it. That's hydraulics. That's the speed of water and considering it relative to the physiological performance. How much of an athlete of a fish do we have approaching our structure? Also, what's unique about this structure is that in many rivers, when you have fish passage, the river stays wetted. Your structure doesn't go dry. But our structure will only engage during flood events, and so we have to be cognizant to have a good overall grading and build out so that as the water flows back into the Tule Canal, which is below our structure, the fish have a good pathway to leave. And finally, we want to make sure they have plenty of time to be able to get out, to be able to pass our structure, and to be able to get back to where they need to be. All of those are key components with regards to our fish passage. Next slide, please. So I've talked to you about some of the biological and regulatory components that have driven our design, but now I'm going to get you into the details with the man who helped to create what we're currently working on as our fish passage design structure. Here's Matt Prosif.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Prosif. As Gabe said, I am a civil engineer with HDR, and I'm actually a fish passage engineer, so it's a specialty within civil engineering. And I am the fish passage design lead for the project. So here's an overview on the screen of the fish passage portion of the Sacramento Weir widening project. Before I jump into features, just going to give a little overview on the operating range that we're talking about. I think it gives a little bit of context, and we'll get more into the operating range here on the next slide. But in general, the fish passage begins operating after the river crests above elevation 26, which is the crest of the widened weir. So then the fish passage will operate as the river descends on the descending limb of the hydrograph. It will operate from elevation 26 to 17. We have a fish ladder component or passageway. Following that, as the river continues to fall, we will open up a second passageway, a fish passage channel, where we will operate from 17 to 14 with both of those passage avenues available. And then we will close off the fish ladder due to the falling water surface elevation in the Sacramento. And the fish passage channel will operate alone from river elevation 14 down to 10. And as I said, we'll get into that more here on the next slide. In general, the fish passage features, oh, pardon me, if we could go back, please. So in general, the fish passage features that we have generally going from upstream to downstream. We have an exit channel for the fish from our structure into the Sacramento. That exit channel is an earthen channel. Downstream of that is a concrete channel that essentially bifurcates or splits into two different passage avenues, both concrete. One is a vertical slot fish ladder, a modified vertical slot fish ladder. The other is a fish passage channel, and we'll get into the details of those here in a moment as well. There's debris management systems provided and features provided around the fish passage exit channel that help to keep debris out of our fish passage, which obviously helps it perform better and allows fish to exit the system more easily and safely. There's also some modifications that will be done to the existing weir, specifically the existing spilling basin, allowing that spilling basin, which currently traps water, to drain and into the fish passage channel, the bypass transport channel that we're creating, allowing fish that used to become stranded in the spilling basin or currently become stranded in the spilling basin as the water recedes to exit out and find a path back to the Sacramento River. There will also be the bypass transport channel, which is the longest section that's in blue there. That is an earthen channel that runs for over 1.5 miles down the bypass and connects Tule Canal adjacent to the Yolo bypass there with our fish passage structure. Next slide. So as I mentioned, operation of the fish passage facilities will begin after the river crests above elevation 26. Once the water in the river recedes down to elevation 26, the widened weir stops spilling water. The bypass is still full of water and is starting to drain out into the Yolo. And that's when we open our operation gate, our flow control gate for the fish ladder, and begin operating the fish ladder. And we'll continue to operate that down to elevation 17. Now, as you can see, the river elevation doesn't follow a regular linear path. Occasionally, following a storm event, we'll get subsequent storms that come in and provide more water to the river. And that's where you see there in red, the blue line is the river elevation. And as time passes, we get another storm event comes and the river level might rise again before falling. And we might get several of those peak smaller storm events coming through or releases of water that cause our fish passage to potentially move back and forth between different modes of operation. So you can see there in blue, after operating the fish ladder, as the water falls in the river, we move into that transition zone for a short period and then begin operating the fish passage channel down between river elevation 14 and 10. But then instead of falling, as you can see on that hydrograph there from 2019, we get another storm event coming through and raises our water surface elevation. So we'll move back into transition with both of the channels operating. And there's even a spike there where towards the end, right before we stop operation, where you can get into just the fish passage or the fish ladder operating by itself. So that cycle can, depending upon the year and obviously the climate, the weather pattern that year, the fish passage could operate for a period of a few weeks to several months. And a snapshot of a historical analysis of when the fish passage facility would have operated had it been installed in the past shows us that, for this snapshot of 2016 to 2017, we could be operating for a matter of a couple of weeks, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, or several months, as you can see there in 2017. Next slide, please. So I'll generally go through the features from upstream to downstream here. And I think probably the biggest one here is the fish passage structure, which is a large concrete structure consisting of a bifurcated channel. Water enters and separates into 2 different flow paths, as I mentioned before. So I'll start with the fish ladder portion, which is on the bottom of your page there, the southern channel. That is, as I mentioned, a modified vertical slot fish ladder. It varies in width from upstream to downstream. Upstream, it's 16 feet wide and widens out to 25 feet wide at the downstream end. And that's over a length of about 450 feet. Each pool, you can see there, we have about 15 fish ladder pools. Each pool varies in length from 20 feet long to 31 feet long. And again, the variation in length and width is all part of the hydraulics of the fish ladder, or due to the hydraulics in the fish ladder. The slot width, again, varies from 2 feet upstream to 3 feet 9 inches downstream. And in order to help pass sturgeon and make this ladder more amenable to sturgeon passage, there's a large orifice on the north wall of that fish ladder. And it is 3 feet high by 4 foot wide. The fish passage channel is on the north channel there on the top of the page. It's much shorter. It's only about a little under 200 feet long. It only has 7 pools. And those pools range in length from 75 feet at the upstream one to 17 feet long at the downstream. Again, that channel is also 16 foot wide with 5 foot slot openings. And there are no orifices in that particular channel. Next slide, please. So here's an isometric of both of those channels. This is taken from a 3-dimensional hydraulic model called a computational fluid dynamic model. or CFD for short, where we model the water moving through the structure at various river elevations. Next slide, please. So prior to water entering the fish ladder and the fish passage channel, the main part of the fish passage channel, we have 2 flow control gates. These gates are 16-foot wide and about 8 feet tall, give or take, depending on the hydraulic head that we have to hold back. These gates are open and close only. So when we want to operate the fish ladder, the gate will open fully. And then when we're done operating, it closes fully. We do not throttle the flow or control the flow with these gates at all. These gates, as I mentioned, are quite large. So it requires 2 stems to operate and has an actuator up above. The fish ladder is higher in elevation, and so that gate, when it comes out of the water, it sticks up above the wall. So we had to place the actuator on a platform up above. So there's a maintenance platform around that actuator and a stairway up to reach that. The lower fish passage channel gate is located lower in the channel, so when it's fully out of the water, it's still below the top of the wall. So we're able to put that actuator platform and maintenance access platform right at the top of the wall. So there's just a walkway from our access road out to that gate. And then you can see there as well, we have 4 bulkhead slots. The bulkheads are essentially steel stop logs, and that allows maintenance personnel to drop in these bulkheads to hydraulically isolate the gates in order to work on them. They would drop the bulkheads in to shut off the flow or to keep the flow out, so they would extend above the water surface elevation, and then they would pump out the space in between where the gate is so they could work in the dry safely. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have debris management that we want to install in order to keep debris from entering the fish passage channel and the fish passage system. So it consists of 3 major pieces. At the upstream end, we have a short debris wall, which is just a concrete wall in the shape of a V. There you can see at the bottom of the screen. And that allows us to direct debris that comes down the river either to the right over the widened weir or back into the main river to the left. The floating debris barrier downstream of that in pink helps to keep that debris directed downstream rather than wanting to make a right-hand turn into our fish passage channel. And then we have an access bench adjacent to the fish passage exit channel. That access bench is located 1 foot above our maximum operating water elevation. So it's located at elevation 27. So at larger floods, that whole area of the access bench becomes inundated with water. We don't want to inundate that area with debris as well. It would defeat the purpose as the water comes down to have to get in there and do maintenance and keep that fish passage channel operating if you're also having to clear debris off of your road just to get to there. So we have a debris fence downstream of the floating debris barrier, and that extends further downstream and goes up the hill, up the access ramp, so that even up to a 100-year flood, debris is continued to be deflected into the main river and away from the access bench. And next slide, please. As I mentioned, we're making some modifications to the existing stowing basin as part of the project. Currently, the existing stowing basin for the existing weir is separated into 6 separate six separate areas that are isolated from each other by guide vanes that extend far downstream of the weir. What this ends up doing is following a spill event over the weir, water in the bypass recedes, and the water in the spilling basin has no way to get out, and it creates a pool. And as you might imagine, fish that aren't lucky enough to get out of that pool and move downstream become stranded in that pool, similar to what Gabe was mentioning before. So in order to provide those fish an exit and reduce the stranding risk on the existing weir, we will be cutting 5 openings, or 1 opening in each of the 5 guide vanes. The openings will be 7 feet high by 8 feet wide. That will accommodate both the movement of water and fish out of these pools, as well as allow maintenance personnel to drive the small excavator up through the channel to more easily clean debris and sediment out of the channel. We will also be installing or leveling the spilling basin floor adjacent to the north abutment and south abutment. A survey was conducted of the floor of the existing spilling basin to see if, even after we cut these veins, openings in these veins, if we would still have pools due to settlement of the spilling basin floor. And it was found that, in general, the floor is essentially flat, except for settlement that has occurred at the north and south end. So there will be a small concrete filling project or activity in order to fill in the low spots adjacent to the north and south abutment of the spilling basin floor, so that we have essentially a flat floor and we can allow the whole spilling basin to drain. And there will be, at the north end of the spilling basin, we're going to cut a hole in the spilling basin wall on the west wall, the downstream wall, and provide a concrete transition to a channel, allowing all that water to pass downstream into the bypass transport channel, as we saw on that overview slide. Next, please. So as I mentioned, the water from that coming through the transition structure out of the existing spilling basin comes into what we call the existing spilling basin drain channel. And essentially, it's a trapezoidal channel, 10 foot wide at the base, with 3 to 1 side slopes. The bottom of that channel will be a grouted rock slope, grouted with rock slope protection, and that will protect against some of the erosive forces that we're going to have from the velocity of water coming down, as well as allow maintenance personnel to drive small wheeled equipment up into the spilling basin to help clean it out. The sides of the channel, the slopes on each side of the channel will have rock slope protection, again, to protect against erosive forces. The existing spilling basin drain channel will also have to cross our access road that runs adjacent to the bypass transport channel, and that will be done through what's referred to as an Arizona crossing, or essentially a dip in the access road to match the channel shape, and that'll allow, in the dry season or dry periods, for personnel to drive across the existing spilling basin drain channel and access the rest of the bypass transport channel downstream, and still let water pass straight into the bypass transport channel when that existing spilling basin drain channel is running water. Next slide, please. So the bypass transport channel is clearly the longest of all the fish passage features here, over 1.5 miles long, down the widened Sacramento bypass all the way down to Tule Canal. as the water recedes in the bypass, the water is going to drain to the low spot, obviously, and that low spot here is the bypass transport channel. The bypass transport channel is nearly flat. It has an invert upstream of 8 where it connects into our fish passage structure, the concrete structure we went over before. And downstream at Tule Canal, it's at an invert of 3. It has a bottom width of 10 and then a small plateau, I guess you could call it there, that's just 1 foot higher than the bottom channel. And the overall channel there is 40 feet wide, as you can see in the cross section there at the top of the screen. Again, running the entire length of the bypass transport channel, we have an access road, and that access road is 18 feet wide. And that access road is also made of native bed material. Up towards the top, you notice that the fish ladder is quite a bit longer than the fish passage channel. So there is an earthen channel to the north of the fish ladder that connects our bypass transport channel with the fish passage channel. That area experiences higher velocity, and a section of that channel, a portion of the channel is there on the bottom left, and that will have rock float protection at its base. Next slide, please. And then here at the downstream end of the bypass transport channel, we have our connection to Tule Canal. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the entire fish passage facility is here to allow fish to move from, essentially move from Tule Canal, the Yolo bypass, following a flood, up and back out into the Sacramento River. So the hydraulic connection to Tule here, as you can see, we're at elevation, bottom elevation of 3, and then we just drop down a couple of feet to elevation of 1, where we connect into Tule Canal. The access road here, when it hits Tule Canal, it stops short, and we have a hammerhead turnaround for access. And again, that's at elevation 12, so about 9 feet higher than the bottom of our channel at this point. And then the bypass transport channel also picks up the cross drainage from the bypass. There are 2 major cross drainages that are coming in. They're currently part of the Levels project that's currently underway. And as part of this project, we will tie those cross drainages into this bypass transport channel. Next slide, please. So just for a sample of some of the computational fluid dynamic modeling that we did of the structure, the concrete structure controls how much water is going down the fish passage. And this helped us get a handle on hydraulics, obviously, and as Gabe was discussing, helps us understand what the water velocity and direction and depths are to make sure that they match up with the swimming capabilities of the fish that we're trying to pass. One of the things it also allows us to do is get a rough estimate, or actually a fairly tight estimate of the flow coming down the fish passage channel. So you can see there at the low end, we're probably down around about 70 cubic feet per second. And at the high end, probably up closer to about 270 cubic feet per second. That modeling is still underway. It's being finalized, and that'll be wrapping up here. We'll discuss that more in the next steps. Next, please. I'll hand this back to Gabe for this slide, and then I'll come back and wrap up.
Thanks, Matt. So as you can see, there's a lot that goes into designing these structures, especially when you consider a floodway, a 16-foot wall of water that we have to be able to manage and the fish to be able to pass. With all of the expertise, the technical knowledge, and investment of time, we want to make sure this works right. And so that includes monitoring to look and see how the fish respond, and then maintaining the overall facility. So you have your operations and maintenance and monitoring. We're currently developing and finalizing our operations and maintenance and monitoring plans. Our O&M is getting very close to being complete to have a full understanding of how we would maintain this facility while it's not working, while it's underway, and then after we close it back down in anticipation for the next flood. With regards to the monitoring program, we are working specifically with NIMS, but it'll be an incredibly robust program that will include acoustic transmitter hydrophones within the structure that gives you a big coarse idea of if fish are passing by. It'll include passive integrated transponder telemetry. That's like when you walk through Walmart and your purchase dings and it has that security little badge on it. Well, we put those in fish. They're about the size of rice, and that will tell us exactly when and whom is passing through individual gateways of our facility. And then we'll actually have cameras that use sound similar to a sonogram. They're called an ERIS, to be able to look at fish behavior when there's no light, when it's turbid, because this is a floodway, so that we can be able to see if fish are, properly ascending or if they're holding, to see what exactly they're doing and being able to refine our overall program in coordination with the National Marine Fisheries Service and other regulators overall. Now, these plans are in development, so that is a broad brushstroke. They may change, they may become more, they may become less. But overall, that's kind of a bookend on where we're at with those in-progress items. Next slide, please. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Gabe. So for next steps, as I mentioned, we're working on the computational fluid dynamic modeling of the fish passage, wrapping that up. We just have a few more model runs to do, and that will be all wrapped up into a technical memorandum that will go into the design documents. We'll also be completing the 95% and 100% design drawing specs and documentation and moving those forward to bid documents, as Sean and Adam were talking about at the beginning here. And then, as Gabe was just mentioning, we're working through the regulatory process for setting up the operation and maintenance plan going forward and the details of that. So that is underway and will continue. With that, thank you for your time. And that's all I have.
Thank you. That was very in-depth. That was great. Sean, Adam, and then Gabe and Matt. That was really helpful. So I don't know if you would do questions now before we take a quick break. Probably better.
Let's take the questions, Greg, and then go to break, please.
Okay. Vice President Dolan, you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have three. Do I understand that the modeling was computational and there was not a physical model that was created? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. In all of your analysis, and I know when you have a big group like that, you have a whole lot of opinions and suggestions, and developing it is a very complex job to do. Did you find that there's any other place? I know Sacramento River is not like any other place, but did you find some other place where some facility like this was operational? I know fish ladders are, but this one's pretty long.
Sure, I can speak to that. Our fisheries program is a national program, and we do work up in the Columbia River. In the Columbia River, they are passing sturgeon, albeit at rates that may not be necessarily optimal. So we do have examples of projects where we're starting to learn what works and what doesn't work, but we don't have a gold shining star. There are other projects where the facilities and the layouts are very dissimilar to the size and the complication of ours as well. And so we did a robust investigation and used our own institutional knowledge amongst our engineers and biologists, along with all the experts, to really look at as many of those and make appropriate apples-to-apples comparisons where we could.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And my third one's not really a question, it's just a, well, maybe it is. The operation and maintenance of this that is under development, is that going to be part of the action that the board takes with the CEQA and the findings and the adoption on August 27th? Or would that still be under development? Are we going to see the operation and maintenance procedures for this fish ladder?
So this is Kyle Vickler with DWR. Similar to how the JFP was constructed, the water control manual came afterwards. So it will follow a similar process where we complete the design. The supplemental EIR does include operations and maintenance. So in theory, that's all built into what will be approved in a few weeks. Thank you.
Okay, and I know that it will be
Kyle,
adapted.
let me just, can I piggyback on Jane's question here? Is it the intention of DWR to assume the perpetual operation and maintenance of the fish ladder?
Yes, absolutely. The flood maintenance branch has been involved over the last couple of years on our project delivery team. We've had representatives from the maintenance branch continually critiquing the design and making sure that they have adequate access and that they're able to maintain it into perpetuity.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the board?
Yeah, Mr. President, Brian Johnson here. Also a question about the monitoring, and I'm just like to hear a little bit more about that, if you don't mind. I mean, you mentioned having pit tags and some sonar cameras, and I imagine you'll have people out there watching to see what's going on, and debris, and if a sturgeon gets stuck, salvaging them and such. But is one of my questions is that going to be integrated with monitoring throughout the bypass? So like the pit tag, those arrays will be tracking fish all the way through, or just in the ladder and at this facility. I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about what that program would be like.
I can speak to a little bit of that, be it the collaboration and coordination between DWR, the Army Corps, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and CVFPB will extend beyond HDR's role. So others may have a fuller answer. I can say that the hydrophone network that we have, that will use the acoustic transmitters that are on sturgeon, is a broad network that ranges throughout the Sacramento River and in other locations. And so sturgeon move, in very large distances, and so that broader course network will give us an idea of where they're at. Passive integrative transponder technology is installed in many different projects and throughout our Central Valley. Specific to other DWR or USACE projects, I don't have all of the entire list there, but we are using the industry standard PIT technology that is largely adapted where it is applied. And so it's not anything exotic that wouldn't be able to be pulled through other standard PIT projects. The ARIS cameras, as you know, are essentially video cameras that just are able to see really well without light. And so those are very localized. Those will be running for extended periods of time and will give us those more intimate looks of what sturgeon are doing if they're having troubles or challenges, not what the date and the timestamp is and the individual identified there. I can say that because of the nature of the facility, because of the amount of information and then some of the challenges associated with that we do have, the monitoring program is incredibly robust, has been discussed in and amongst academia and the regulators with large support, and will be something that will give us excellent insight into the performance of the facility going forward.
Thanks.
Hope that answers your question there. I know I didn't quite get to the larger scale, and there may be others on the call that might be able to, but I think that starts at it.
Yes, this is Sean McNeil. The ARCF 16 program as a whole does have some responsibility to do some pre and post construction monitoring. So I believe that does occur. I'm not on the team, so I don't have all the direct details, but if you would like more, we can direct it to our environmental staff to give a summary back to DWR environmental staff to provide to the board if that's preferred.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Brian Johnson would want that, Sean. Thank you. Just transmit that to Leslie, and she'll make sure the board members will get that.
I agree.
Okay, any other comments from the board or questions? Okay, how about the public? Anybody from the public want to ask any questions on this item?
I see Rick Reinhardt has his hand raised.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Rick?
Morning, President Edgar, members of the board. Apologize if I missed it. Did you talk about the planting plan that's going to go along the this channel? Can you, if not, can you describe what is envisioned for that?
Yeah, that was discussed. I believe was discussed, but Kyle or Sean, maybe you can address that issue.
I'll direct it towards Adam if he wants to take a first answer to that.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Along the, or are you referring to along the bypass transport channel that Matt went into description on the fish passage channel? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yes, exactly.
So that channel is going to be a natural channel, and there's no planned plantings along that channel or in the channel. There will be a O&M maintenance of that channel going forward because there will be water, so there will be some plants. Matt, please correct me if I misspoke.
That's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Kyle Bickler with DWR. If I could add, the Levels project has 18 acres of riparian forest that will be planted over the existing levee footprint after it's degraded. So that runs pretty much along, parallel to the bypass transport channel where the fish will swim, when it's operational. So there will be some additional riparian forest that will be planted out there. Does that answer your question, Rick?
It does, and I was aware of those 18 acres. I just didn't know if there's anything additional being proposed as part of the fish passage. So thank you for going over that.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else from the public, Ryan?
I don't see anyone at this time.
Okay. Okay, at this point, Greg, I'm going to take your suggestion and we'll call a 15-minute recess, please. Okay, I think we can bring this meeting back to order. Ryan? Okay, Greg, I think we can proceed with item D.
Okay, thank you, President Edgar. I want to, let's see, so items D, E, and F, we combined into one presentation.
Sounds good.
So I don't know if you want to take questions at the very end after all three, or you want to take a little break between each one. It's up to the board.
Well, were there questions are going to come up on item D that are going to be answered in item E and F? Is that why you want to take it in one presentation?
Yeah, I think so. And just the way the flow of the presentations go.
Okay.
So,
well, let's go through D, E, and F, and then we'll take questions from the board and the public.
Okay, great. Thank you. Right, so next, Selva Mohan and Dennis Bartolomeu are going to be giving a presentation on the SAFECA's Encroachment Removal Incentive Program. Thank you. Selva?
Thanks, Greg. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. President Edgar, Vice President Dolan, members of the board. My name is Selva Mohan, Chief of the Sacramento Levy Section, Plan Implementation and Compliance Branch, board staff. Today, I will be providing an informational update on the Encroachments Removal Incentive Program, initiated and being implemented by the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, known as SAFECA, in support of the Sacramento River East Levee project. This is agenda item 4B. Next slide, Ryan. Here's the presentation overview. In the presentation, I will start by giving an overview of ARCF 16 project and introduce the project sponsors. I will then briefly touch on the Sac River East Levee component of the project and real estate right-of-way responsibilities of the partners. I will then provide an update of the Encroachment Removal Incentive Program, known as ERIP. After that, I will highlight the ERIP implementation success so far, and I will end my presentation by providing next steps of ERIP. Next slide, Ryan. The federally authorized American River Common Features 2016 project features a variety of improvements along the American and Sacramento rivers, east side tributaries, Sac Bypass, and Sacramento Weir. The image on the right-hand side shows the ARCF project area, and this map is included as attachment A of the staff report. Next slide, Ryan. This slide shows the project sponsors of the ARCF 16 project. As you can see in the slide, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the federal sponsor, and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board and SAFECA, collectively known as non-federal sponsors of the project. Next slide. The Sac River East Levee project is the portion of the entire ARCF 2016 project, and it includes improvements along the Sacramento River for seepage and stability improvements along the levee. The surround construction, as you have heard this morning from Nicole's presentation, has been divided into many contracts and being taken in different time frames. This map also is included as attachment B in the staff report. Next slide, Ryan. The board and SAFECA, collectively known as non-federal sponsors, are responsible for securing and certifying the right-of-way necessary to construct the flood control system improvements. In areas where an existing state flood control easement does not exist, non-federal sponsors have been working in close coordination to obtain the right-of-way necessary to construct the system improvements. Next slide, Ryan. So what is ERIP? As you can imagine, several privately owned encroachments have been constructed within the existing flood control easement along the Sac River East Levee footprint. So SAFECA has developed a program known as Encroachment Removal Incentive Program, in short version ERIP, to facilitate the timely removal of encroachments directly affected by construction within the SREL seepage stability footprint to avoid unnecessary delays in project implementation. Next slide, Ryan. Here, continuing information about the ERIP. The ERIP provides compensation to property owners if they agree to the encroachment removal prior to start of the levee construction. So far, they have gone through 2 years of construction, and so far the ERIP has been generally well received by the homeowners. Next slide, Ryan. As indicated before, the ERIP is a voluntary program. So in the event that a property owner does not enter into an ERIP with SAFECA, then it would be left to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board to address the encroachments. Board staff received few cases from SAFECA as part of the 2021 construction effort, and I will go over those in my next presentation. Next slide, Ryan. So this slide shows the ERIP implementation success so far. SAFECA has successfully entered into ERIAs agreements for seepage and stability contracts for 2020 and 2021 contracts. As part of 2019, SAFECA entered into 9 ERIAs that accounts for 17 encroachments affected by 2020 construction. A total of 27 agreements were successfully entered in 2020/2021 timeframe with 27 homeowners. That accounts for a total of 66 encroachments affected by the 2021 construction. Next slide, Ryan. So here is another view of the ERIP implementation status. The table on the left shows the number of signed ERIPs and anticipated ERIPs to be executed in the upcoming years. The same information is provided in another view in the pie chart shown on the right-hand side that shows the percentage of ERIAs, in terms of the overall SREL project. As you can see, majority of the encroachments falls under 2022 next year construction zone, which is in the big pocket area. Next slide, Ryan. This slide summarizes the next steps in the ERIP program in support of the next phases of construction. A total of 34 homeowners with a total of 86 encroachments are currently identified to be impacted by the next year construction. SAFECA has initiated and sent notices and has been in communication with the homeowners. Approximately 22 homeowners with a total of 41 encroachments are expected to be impacted in contract 4, that's the last year of construction 2023, but these numbers will be verified once the design reaches its 90% level. As we move forward, board staff will be working closely with SAFECA to address these encroachments so that they are removed timely without any delay to the Army Corps construction. Next slide, Ryan. So here is a snippet of the ERIP agreement. The purpose of this slide is to highlight an important language included in the agreement signed by the homeowners. What it basically says is the owner agrees that replacement of any of the encroachments or addition of any new encroachments shall be entirely at owner's expense, and owner further agrees that such replacements or additions shall first be permitted through the Central Valley Flood Protection Board as required by existing state law, which is at the CVFPB's sole discretion. So this language is included in every signed agreements. Next slide, Ryan. This concludes presentation of agenda item 4D. What you are seeing in this slide is a couple of examples of removed encroachments as part of the last year construction. Cross levee fence at the top, and then at the other two images show stairs, concrete stairs. Thank you. Great, that concludes the 4E, and I will move to 4F. Okay, this is agenda item 4E. Again, Selva Salomohan, Chief of the Levy Section, Board Staff. In this presentation, I will briefly go over the Sacramento River East Levee construction impacted encroachments, and Dennis Bartolome, Board Staff, will present existing access point survey that was done by Board Staff in MA9 area. This is agenda item 4E. Next slide. Right. Here again, I will cover quickly, go over the project partners. I will briefly go through different phases of SREL construction for context of this presentation. And then I will provide an update on each phases of construction and impacted encroachments. After that, we'll take the 2021 encroachments removal as a case study to show how did the encroachment removal process work from start to finish. Then I will show few recent developments. The board staff took initiatives in support of the ARCF 16 project. Finally, Dennis board staff will wrap up the presentation by presenting a very informative interactive map we developed documenting all existing access points in MA9 area that falls within the Sac River East Levee construction's footprint. Next slide, Ryan. So this slide shows the project partners of the ARCF 16 project. We have seen this slide a couple of times. As you can see, a three-party project partnership agreement, commonly referred as PPA, was executed between Army Corps of Engineers, CVFPB, and SAFECA in January 2019. In the same time, a local project partnership agreement, commonly referred as LPPA, was executed between board and SAFECA. So this agreement basically establishes the roles and responsibilities for each partners. And Department of Water Resources provides project support to CVFPB and other partners in this project. Next slide, Ryan. The purpose of this slide is to show an overall SREL construction and different contract phases. Again, you heard this called May this morning, so I'll be very brief on this. The map on the left-hand side shows an overall construction map with some landmarks. At the top, Pioneer Bridge is shown, and small pocket and big pockets also highlighted there, just for reference. The map on the right-hand side shows the zoomed-in version of levee segments from small pocket to north to show different colored levee segments. So in the next few slides, I will walk you through each contract phase and impacted encroachments in those phases. Next slide, Ryan. So just to put a context, this slide shows the completed construction in 2020. A total of 2.6 miles of levee cutoff wall was completed. And for this work, a total of 17 encroachments were identified to interfere with the construction, and all were removed prior to construction. For this contract, SAFECA executed 9 agreements with the homeowners. The primary encroachments were stairs and landscaping. Next slide, Ryan. So what you are seeing in this slide is few examples of removed encroachments in 2020. Concrete stairs and wooden stairs are the primary ones over there. Next slide, Ryan. So this slide shows the segments that are currently under construction this year in 2021. The map on the left side shows the segments that are under active construction. And the zoomed-in version of the image on the right hand shows different cutoff wall construction that are underway in construction 2020. For this construction, a total of 66 encroachments were identified to interfere with construction footprint, and they all were removed prior to start of construction. The removed encroachments include stairs, landscaping, retaining wall, and few cross-levee fences. In the next two slides, I will show a closer look at the segments that are currently under construction. Here, what you are seeing is an image. The left side shows the segments around the Pioneer Bridge in the construction. A jet grout cutoff wall is being constructed, and the image on the right hand shows the jet grout cutoff wall operation. Next slide, Ryan. Next slide, one more. Yeah. So in this slide, the map on the left side shows the segment highlighted in yellow in the big pocket and small pocket area that are currently under construction. The image on the right-hand side shows a typical cutoff wall construction. Next slide. So what you are seeing in this slide is few examples of removed encroachments in support of 2021 construction. Image on the left shows wooden stairs, and the image on the right shows a cross-levee fence. Next slide, Ryan. This is the upcoming construction for next year, 2022. The slide shows the segments that are planned under 2022 design. The map on the center of the slide shows the levee segment circled in orange. That's in the big pocket area that is being designed under this contract. So in this contract, approximately 2 miles of cutoff wall will be constructed. And this is where the majority of encroachments were identified. A total of 111 encroachments were identified to interfere with this contract, and board staff and safeguard are closely coordinating to address those encroachments prior to construction beginning 2022. The impacted encroachments include stairs, landscaping, retaining walls, and few cross-levee fences. Next slide, Ryan. So here's a summary of impacted encroachments in the construction year 2022. The column on the left side shows the different categories of impacted encroachments. As you can see, majority of the encroachments are stairs and landscaping. The last two rows in this table show a total of 111 encroachments associated with 44 homeowners are impacted by this construction. The table also breaks down the eligible ERIP numbers and the cases included in Safeguard's real estate acquisition effort. The last column shows a progress to date, including regarding Safeguard's ERIP program, that a total of 13 homeowners so far accepted Safeguard's program that accounts for about 30 encroachments out of that 111. Next slide, Ryan. So this is the last year construction zones that are shown here, 2023. This is again a contract that will be completed in 23 last year, and approximately 1.2 miles of levee improvement is being planned and designed. Under this contract, approximately 40 encroachments that belongs to about 22 homeowners are expected to interfere with the construction footprint. And these numbers are estimate only, and we will revise it, once the design reaches 90% stage. And primary encroachments include stairs and landscaping. Next slide, Ryan. So here's the summary of overall encroachment removal status for the entire SREL project. As you can see on the left, for 2020, a total of 17 encroachments were removed. For 2021, a total of 66 encroachments were removed. For next year, a total of 111 will have to be removed. And finally, in 2023, about 41 encroachments will have to be addressed. The pie chart on the right side shows the percentage of impacted encroachments in relation to the overall SREL project. So as you can see, again, majority of the impacted encroachments are in the next year construction zone around the big pocket area, about 47%. Next slide, Ryan. So here is the case study that I need to briefly explain how the 2022 encroachment removal worked. The timeline on the left side shows from start to finish. The process started with an initial fieldwork in spring 2020 at the 65% design stage. Army Corps, Safecar, and board staff participated in the fieldwork to identify the encroachments that would interfere with the construction footprint. In February 2020, board staff performed permit research for all the identified encroachments and shared the findings with Safecar. In around May 2020 timeframe, Safecar has begun contacting eligible homeowners regarding their encroachment removal incentive program. By October 2020, Safecar reached agreement with 21 homeowners, and the remaining homeowners cases were given to the board staff for further action. In the meantime, Safecar was still in contact with the homeowners and answering their questions. In November 2020, upon receiving the cases from Safecar, board staff sent out board notification letters to those homeowners regarding initiation of permit revocation to address their encroachments. Between November 20 and April 2021, board staff have been working on 6 permit revocation cases. In the same period, each remaining homeowner began signing agreement with Safecar at various timeframes. And finally, by April 2021, all remaining homeowners signed agreement with Safecar. As such, all encroachments were addressed prior to Army Corps began their construction in 2021. One thing I want to highlight here is throughout the entire process, board staff have been coordinating with Safecar and Army Corps very closely. We also answered, many questions came from the homeowners since they received the board notification letters. The overall effort in this process is a testament to the collaborative work being carried out by the project partners. Next slide, Ryan. So this slide shows the proposed, permit revocation path we developed in accordance to Title 23 regulations to handle the cases referred to as by Safecar. As I said earlier, board staff received a list of 14 encroachments that were owned by 6 homeowners. This is the revocation path we were going to take to address those cases. What I wanted to highlight here is, because all the homeowners eventually signed agreement with Safecar, we didn't have to go through any permit revocation board hearing for the 2021 construction. However, through this exercise, we developed few permit revocation templates for different cases, and we believe, having developed a process like this will enable us to better handle for future revocation cases as we move forward for 2022 or 2023 if needed. Next slide, Ryan. So in the next few slides, I will briefly show you some of the recent developments the board staff took initiative in support of the project. What you see in the screen is an image of frequently asked questions that we prepared and shared with partnering agencies and homeowners to help answer some of the most asked questions by homeowners regarding their encroachments. This FAQ, again, is included as attachment C of the staff report. Next slide, Ryan. This is another recent update. 4 unpermitted pipe gates that were identified to interfere with the swell construction were removed in this spring by MA9 in coordination with board staff. Following the removal, board staff coordinated with MA9 and installed no unauthorized vehicle or access allowed signs to deter unauthorized vehicle access to the levee. The image on the left shows one of the removed gate, and the image on the right shows the installed sign. Next slide, Ryan. This is my last slide before I turn the presentation to Dennis. In April 2021, board staff conducted a field survey to document the existing access points along the Sac River East Levee project footprint in maintenance area 9. As you can see in the image on the right, we documented vehicle access pedestrian access points, and other encroachments related to access to the levee. Board staff then created very interesting interactive map using the collected data. The map is included as attachment D in the staff report, and Dennis Bartolome, board staff, will now walk you through these maps. Dennis.
Thanks, Lava, for the quick rundown. Hello, President Edgar, members of the board. My name is Dennis Bartolome, board staff of the Sacramento Levee section. I'll now give an overview of the survey of the access point map in Maintenance Area 9, known as MAO9. So let me now first go ahead and share my screen to show the actual map. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So just to give some context, and as stated by Selva, a team member and I went on a field visit to this maintenance area to capture and document all access points and their locations. The purpose of this map is for future permit considerations for access points and also for public safety and to homeowners to identify all public access points to prevent unauthorized access on the levee. So now if we look at the legend on the map on the top left corner, you'll see the type of access points we captured, similar to vehicle access points, pedestrian access points, cross levee fences, chain link fences, wrought iron fences, bollard posts, and pipe gates. We also added fences and gates that were removed based on the ongoing construction for the American River Common Feature 16 project. But for this presentation, I'll just be focusing on those two access points mentioned. And then by observing the map, you'll see that we divided the segments into 10 sections, which I'll be going through to show the locations and pictures of the access points. And then before going over these access points, I just wanted to highlight the disclaimer located at the bottom of the map. And it states that the access point shown have not been surveyed and are based upon staff observations taken in the field of April 2021. So the access points are subject to change. So just wanted to point that out there. And also we made this map file slightly interactive, so it's easier to transition back and forth from a specific map section to this main map. So if for example, if I click on this section 5 here, it just takes you straight to the map section. And then if I click on the top left button here, it just takes you back to the main map. So let's start off with section 1 here, and I'll just run through each of these sections. So here, you can see there are 4 vehicle access points, fences, and bollard posts. This area is just south of Sutterville Road, where Captain's Table is located, and you'll find Scott's Seafood and a hotel within proximity. While we were in this area, we actually noticed a variety of public access points, and these are the access points we gathered. Vehicle access is limited outside of Captain's Table with bollard posts installed as seen in the map. Then let me just go back to the main map here and go to section 2. Moving on to section 2, there are 4 vehicle access points and a couple cross levee fences. The vehicle access points in this section all have either a pipe gates, a chain link fence, or a wrought iron fence installed to prevent any unpermitted vehicles from accessing the levee. And then the location of this section is next to Chicory Bend Park. Next section. As you can see, there are quite a few pedestrian access points on the landside slope of the levee, located right along Riverside Boulevard. These access points are only about a few feet away from each other, and we could see there one vehicle access point at the bottom of the map with the pipe gate installed. In this section, we are entering just the top of Big Pocket. There are a couple of access points in this region. There's a pedestrian access point located at Zacharias Park, which Nicole mentioned is closed currently for construction, and a vehicle access point in a residential area, and a couple more cross levee fences here. Let me just go back to the main map to show everyone where we are now. So we just finished section 4, and now we are at the middle of Big Pocket at section 5. A few more pedestrian access points in this section. Most of these access points are accessed from a residential area, and there is also a couple of vehicle access points on the top of the bottom of the map, top and bottom of the maps. Sorry. here we are now just about at the belly of a big pocket. There's more pedestrian access points on the landside slope of the levee here, and a couple of vehicle access points located near the Pocket Canal Parkway. In this section, there are 4 vehicle access points and 1 pedestrian access points. All of the vehicle access point here have pipe gates installed to prevent any unpermitted vehicles from entering as well. Just south of Big Pocket, next to I-5 freeway, located in the vicinity of Freeport Marina, are 4 vehicle access points and a couple pedestrian access points with stairs on the landslide slope of the levee. And then for this one as well, the vehicle access points in the section are also closed off with gates. In this section, there are 3 vehicle access points with pipe gates installed at the entrance and a pedestrian access point just south of Freeport Bridge. And then here we're at the last section here. There's a couple more vehicle access points, and this is located just next to Cliffs Marina. And that's about it for the access points for in Maintenance Area 9. It took us about a couple days to gather all these data points, and we actually started at this section here and moved our way up where Sorterville Road and I-5 freeway is. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. I believe this should conclude the presentation for agenda item 4E. So next slide, please, Ryan.
Yes, so this concludes agenda item 4E, and now we can move to agenda item 4F. Next slide, Ryan. Karina.
All right, so good afternoon, President Edgar, Vice President Dolan, members of the board. My name is Karina Castro. I am board staff with the Sacramento Levee section, and today Selva and I will be covering agenda item 4F. We will be providing a brief update on the upcoming erosion work along the Sacramento and American rivers. Next slide. Thank you. So here is an overview of what to expect during this presentation. I will start by going over the overall project footprint for the Sacramento River erosion improvements. I will then go over each of the contracts under this work, as well as the anticipated timelines and encroachments associated with each contract. From there, I will go on to cover the entire American River erosion project footprint, after which I will cover each of the project contracts, as well as the anticipated timelines for each contract. After that, Selva will wrap up by discussing our coordination efforts with the State Lands Commission as they relate to the erosion work. Next slide, please. So before jumping directly into the erosion work, I just wanted to briefly go over the authorized plan set forth for the American River Common Features 2016 project. A similar map and table were shown by Nicole earlier, but here I just wanted to reiterate that the ARCF 16 project authorized up to 10 miles of erosion improvements along the Sacramento River. Next slide. Thank you. Here we have an overall map showing the Sacramento River erosion project footprint. As you can see, it was split into 4 contracts, with contracts 2 and 3 taking up the majority of the project footprint, and contracts 1 and 2 taking up just a small portion of the work in the Little Pocket area. I would also like to note that an overall map of the Sacramento River erosion work was provided to you in Attachment E. I will now go over each of the contracts in a bit more detail. I will be providing the approximate number of bodocks identified within each contract footprint based on our research, since bodock encroachments are the primary encroachment of concern for the erosion work. Next slide. So starting with contract 1, it is the smallest of the 4 contracts, covering approximately 1,150 feet of improvements near Scott Seafood, which I have indicated in the image on the right for your reference. The design for contract 1 is 100% complete, and it is scheduled for construction in 2022. No bodocks were identified within contract 1. Next slide. Here we have contract 2. It consists of a few separate segments spanning from Pioneer Bridge all the way to the Big Pocket area. It is the largest of the 4 contracts at approximately 3.4 miles. We anticipate that the design for contract 2 will be at 65% by January 2022, and it is scheduled for construction in 2024 and 2025. This is also the contract with the most amount of encroachments identified, with 16 boat docks, as well as a few other miscellaneous encroachments, including items such as stairs, pumps, sprinklers, fences, and utilities. Next slide, please. Here we have contract 3. It consists of 2 segments located in the Big Pocket area. It is approximately 2.8 miles, and we anticipate that 65% design will be completed by September of 2022, with construction scheduled to occur in 2025 and 2026. Because this is located in a very residential area, there will also be quite a few boat docks identified, with 15 total, as well as a few other miscellaneous encroachments. Next slide. And here we have contract 4. It is located just southwest of contract 1, as you can see in the enlarged image. It is just slightly larger than contract 1, covering approximately 1,565 feet. We anticipate that 65% design will be completed by May of 2022, and construction will be scheduled for 2024. Although this is a relatively small portion of the overall project footprint, there were quite a few encroachments, with 11 boat docks identified. Next slide. And here we have a few example photos of encroachments impacting the Sacramento River erosion work. As you can see, this is mostly boat dock items, but there are a few boat dock related structures such as stairs, ramps, and gangways. Next slide. Thank you. Bringing us back to the American River Common Features 2016 authorized plan. Here I wanted to look at the authorized erosion work for the American River. Here we can see that ARCF 16 authorized up to 11 miles of erosion improvements along the American River. Next slide. Here is an overall map showing the American River erosion contracts, with contracts 3 and 4 being more widely spread out along the American River, and contracts 1 and 2 located just above Sacramento State University. I would like to note that our research did not identify any boat dock encroachments within this footprint, within any of the contract footprints. So I will not be providing these numbers as I was for the Sacramento River erosion work. Also, we have, for your reference, the American River erosion project footprint provided to you in attachment F. Next slide. So here we are starting with contract 1. It consists of a single segment it's approximately 1.2 miles long, located just above Sacramento State University. The design for contract 1 is 100% complete, and it is scheduled for construction in 2022. Next slide. Here we have contract 2. It is 2 segments, that's approximately 1.4 miles in total length. It is also located right across the river from contract 1, as we saw previously, and Sacramento State University. Design for contract 2 is 95% complete, and it is scheduled for construction in 2022 and 2023. Next slide. Thank you. Contract 3 consists of 3 segments, totaling approximately 2.8 miles. It is currently at 35% design, and it is scheduled for construction in 2023 and will be wrapping up in early 2024. Next slide. And finally, we have contract 4. It consists of 4 segments, totaling approximately 1.4 miles. Design for contract 4 is at 10%, and it is, like contract 3, also scheduled for construction in 2023 and will be wrapping up in early 2024. That is all I have in terms of updates for the upcoming erosion work. I will now pass it along to Selva, who will provide some information on our coordination efforts with the State Lands Commission as it relates to the erosion work. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. Good afternoon again, Board President Edgar and Vice President Dolan. This is Selva Salomon, Chief of Sacramento Levy Section, Board staff. So in the next few slides, I will present information that was shared in a recent coordination meeting facilitated by the board staff with the State Lands Commission staff. As you have heard from Karina's presentation, it is obvious that board docks are the primary encroachments that are expected to interfere with erosion work. So in anticipation of future board permit applications for new or replacement of board docks, board staff recently facilitated a coordination meeting with State Lands Commission staff to better understand the SLC's jurisdiction and requirements for encroachments within their jurisdiction. And we do have a representative from State Lands Commission. The name is Ninette Lee, Public Land Manager, is with us today to possibly assist with any clarifying questions. Next slide, Ryan. So what you are seeing in this slide is a cartoon of a typical levee cross-section and a board dock, that is circled in the black circle on the water side. But just to show illustration, for the reference. The ordinary high water mark point is shown with the red line in the water side. You can see on the water side. So the State Lands Commission has jurisdiction below the ordinary high water mark on the water side. As you can see, below the levee cross section, jurisdictional limits are shown. So as you can see, Central Valley Flood Protection Board's state plan of flood control jurisdiction rights extend from landside right-of-way to landside right-of-way on the other side of the levee system. So state plan of flood control jurisdictions goes from landside to landside right-of-way. And State Lands Commission's jurisdiction from ordinary high water mark on one levee system to the other segment of the levee. As you can see, the board dock is located within the SLC's jurisdiction, as well as it has to meet the as well as the board's jurisdiction. So it has to meet both requirements as well. Next slide, Ryan. So because the board docks are located within State Lands Commission's jurisdiction boundaries, permit applicants need to get lease agreements from State Lands Commission to construct any encroachments below the ordinary high water mark. So getting a lease agreement is not a requirement for processing a board permit. However, we encourage applicants to work with SLC to obtain necessary lease agreements. And it concludes the presentation of agenda item 4F. Now I will turn it over to Greg Harvey, Chief of the Plan Implementation and Compliance Branch, to wrap up the series of these presentations. Greg?
Thank you, Silva. Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you to Nicole May for giving the presentation of the overview and the whole Army Corps team, and Kyle Bickler with the department and the design team that he works with, and our Sacramento Levee section staff. I just wanted to highlight all the coordination that has been going on in this project, and it's a massive undertaking, and I think this was a great opportunity to give a detailed perception of all the work going out there for the board. So with that, President Edgar, if there are questions from the board.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That was very comprehensive and very interesting. Is Nicole May still around? Nicole, are you still on the conference?
I am, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm interested in the access that points that the team has pointed out in the latter part of the presentation. And we talked originally about engineered access to accommodate public access to the levees, but in such a way that we do it in the right place and not at multiple places along the levees to protect them from improper access. Are engineered access points built into these contracts that you referred to in your presentation?
They are not. We're utilizing existing access points.
Okay. Well, then let me go back to Dennis Bartholomew. Dennis, you pointed out all of these access points at these various 10 sections of the levee that you talked about. Are these access points existing unpermitted access points, or some of them permitted or not, or what? What's
Um,
going on with these?
so most of these are either permitted or unpermitted, but we are still in our initial research on this project, so we can definitely get back to you with those numbers.
Well, how do we get to the point where ultimately we want, and public policy here is that we should have public access to these levees for um, people who want to walk the levees and so on. And there's a lot of controversy about that, as you know. But the public policy is that we should have engineered access that's available to the public, that does not encroach on anybody's private property. How is that going to be accomplished?
So as stated in the initial part of the map here, so we are still in our initial portion of creating these maps, and we still don't have a initial guide of where we're gonna go about these access points. So definitely we could just go back, do our research, and decide from there.
Okay, so these would have to be subsequent activities that are planned and and eventually permitted and so on. And apparently you want to use the same team of the Corps and DWR, us, and Safeguard to accomplish that. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
But so this will be a subsequent activity that we'll have to deal with when that time comes. Okay.
Yeah, definitely a team effort for this portion.
Right. Karina, you talked about erosion contracts and when we're going to get those done. How are they being coordinated, or at least coordinated with the Corps' contracts that they're letting right now, or are these going to be contracts that are going on at the same time or as the other contracts, or what's happening?
Yeah, this is being coordinated with the Corps. I believe Nicole had a slideshow also showing just a breakdown of the schedule.
And her schedule, I didn't, didn't. Well, I probably saw it, but it didn't get into my head. Are the
Yeah.
erosion contracts coordinated with the construction contracts that the Corps is doing? So if they're done in okay, great.
I think she did point out that there are 3 contracts with the Sacramento River erosion that would exceed the 2024 deadline, but all the others should be
okay. And those are the contracts that you were referring to.
Yes.
Those other contracts. Okay, fine. Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other questions from the board at this point?
Yes.
Mary Jane?
Yes. There's been talk about the timelines, and with this pandemic, a lot of the employers, whether you're in construction or ag or what other sector, are having problems maintaining and being able to bring people onto their company. Has that been discussed as it relates to this pandemic, being able to meet the timelines that we've heard about today?
I guess
I
that
could
would be okay.
I could try to take a stab at that. So Nicole May, we were in our first year of construction, major construction year when the pandemic hit. And so we did have a lot of debate about, whether it was essential work or how that worked. Determined it was essential, contracts are to go on. We have clauses within our contract to accommodate any kind of epidemic or pandemic where the contractor receives time but not cost. But we have had some instances where we've had small delays associated with material and equipment delivery, but nothing that has caused us any significant delay to this point. And we were really lucky in the first year and in this year that we haven't had any outbreaks on site. Obviously, employees wear masks and follow all the essential CDC protocols, and we've been very lucky. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. You have been very lucky. You know, a lot of, just people in general contracting have had some real horror stories about trying to maintain their schedules because of a lack of employees, people not wanting to work because of the pandemic. So thank you for the information.
Any other board questions?
Yes, Mr. President, Jane Dolan.
Yes, Jane.
I think I want to follow up just for perhaps mine and others' clarification. It appears that the analysis of where there are encroachments on this whole massive construction locations, that there's no specific analysis yet whether what exists had been permitted or not. Whenever we talk about encroachments, it seems like we lay out that there's something wrong with them. And there isn't necessarily something wrong with them. It's just that, for one, they're in the way of the safety construction, and the other, we still have to determine how they were permitted and how they're replaced. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I've gathered, and that's why I asked the questions on where are these engineered access points going to be, because that's the key. We can't close all of these access points and then not provide public access to the levees. That's contrary to public policy that we've adopted. So I think it's a fair statement to say we're behind on this, Jane. I think looks like yeah, from Dennis's presentation and what he plans to do, we probably a year or two behind on that. We should have been, and we should have been planning these engineered access. We shouldn't leave it to the future, because that's going to be an issue. I think fairly shortly as the construction proceeds. So I think it's fair to say we're behind, and this needs to be, a little fire needs to be put under this part of the project. I think you're right.
Well, and I think that we as board members can provide some guidance and assistance. It's pretty clear to me that once this federal legislation was enacted and gave a short time frame, and it is a short time frame for construction projects of this scope, that there needed to be some initial work to be sure that construction occurred. So I don't know, it's going to take another 2+ years, because we know where they are. We know where there's crunch points. So we've got to now start working on some sense of guidance for how these are or are not replaced and where. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. You're probably happy for that, Mr. President.
No, I'm not. No. Well, see, that's what I was originally hoping this construction would include, is some of those engineered access points, but we're not at a point where we can decide where they are, because we haven't done the inventory yet of where they are and whether they're permitted. Or we started it, but we haven't, as Dennis pointed out, we're not complete. There's a lot of work to do on that. So.
Well, we know what exists physically now. So then the next question is, what's next once construction's done? So the construction is going to go over the next 2 to 3 years. So we'll get working on it.
Yeah. I agree. Any other questions? Okay, any questions from the public? You see any out there, Ryan? Okay, if there are no other questions, any other comments from the board or the public, item 5 is adjournment. And Greg, thank you to you and all the presenters today. This was very informative, very helpful. Appreciate that very much.
And thank you very much for the opportunity, President Edgar.
Okay. Without objection, we're on item 5, and without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.